Hey, I'm not usually the spooky story type. Honestly, city life doesn't leave much room for creepy crawlies, let alone the genuinely terrifying. But recently I dug up a memory I haven't dared touch in years. It happened back in the summer of 2019, on our annual guys' trip to Black Lake in the Adirondacks. Same routine every year. A rickety little cabin tucked away deep in the woods, a chance to escape the city for a weekend of fishing, bad jokes around a crackling fire, and the kind of peace that only comes with fresh air and zero cell service. This year, though, the peace curdled into something far more unsettling. A week before the trip, I managed to sprain my ankle in a spectacularly clumsy tumble down the stairs. Nothing major, but enough to sideline me from our usual hikes through the dense Adirondack trails. While Steve, Mark, and John set off for their morning adventure, I settled onto the creaky porch swing with a well-worn paperback, the sun dappling the weathered wood in a comforting rhythm. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. Maybe it was the quiet, or maybe it was the way the shadows seemed to dance a little too eagerly on the forest floor, but a prickle of unease started to crawl up my spine. Like a fly buzzing just out of reach, the feeling of being watched intensified. I scanned the tree line, my heart skipping a beat when I saw it. It was a figure. Tall and impossibly thin, its skin seemed to shimmer with the pale luminescence of moonlight. Its eyes, if you could even call them that, were black pits that reflected nothing back. It just stood there, motionless, a stark contrast to the vibrant green canvas of the forest. But for a long, terrifying moment, we locked eyes. My breath hitched in my throat, the book forgotten on my lap. My phone, useless with no service, mocked me from the splintered table. My ankle, throbbing with a dull ache, screamed in protest at the thought of even a limp. All I could do was force myself to focus on the worn pages of the book, stealing terrified glances at the creature from time to time. It remained there, an unsettling statue in the dappled sunlight. The rhythmic crunch of boots on gravel announced the guys' return, their laughter and excited chatter a welcome sound. Steve burst through the clearing, proudly displaying a catfish so behemoth it looked like it could swallow a small dog. My voice, when I finally managed to speak, felt rusty and disused. I mumbled congratulations on the catch, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. They were oblivious, too engrossed in their day's exploits to notice the tremor in my hands or the way my eyes darted nervously toward the tree line. The encounter felt like a waking nightmare, a figment of a sleep-deprived mind. Maybe the peace and quiet, the complete disconnect from the city's constant hum, had finally gotten to me. The next morning, the guilt of keeping the encounter secret gnawed at me. But how could I explain it? They'd think I'd cracked, which maybe I had. Determined to shake off the lingering unease, I grabbed a book and headed back to the porch. The air held a crispness that hinted at the approaching fall, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves, creating a symphony of soft whispers. As I settled onto the swing, a familiar prickle of unease crawled up my spine. I dismissed it as nerves, forcing myself to focus on the soothing rhythm of the turning pages. But then a flicker of movement in the periphery of my vision caught my eye. My breath hitched. There, standing motionless amongst the trees, was the creature. This time, however, it wasn't on the edge of the clearing. It was closer. Much closer. It stood at the very edge of the woods, its pale form a stark contrast to the vibrant foliage. Its black eyes seemed to bore into me, a silent accusation hanging heavy in the air. Panic, cold and raw, clawed at my throat. This was no illusion. This was real. And the creature was no longer content with simply watching. The fear turned to primal terror. I raced inside, slamming the cabin door and locking it tight. The flimsy wood offered little comfort, but it was all I had. The afternoon sun dipped below the tree line, casting long, ominous shadows across the floorboards. Silence pressed in, broken only by the frantic thump of my own heart. Then the sounds began. Scuttling noises on the roof, scratching at the walls, These weren't animal sounds. These were something worse, something filled with malice. A blood-curdling scream pierced the silence, erupting from somewhere deep within the woods. It was a sound so raw and primal that it tore through me, leaving behind a gaping wound of terror. For hours I sat huddled in a corner, a kitchen knife clutched in my trembling hand. The screams finally stopped as abruptly as they started, followed by an eerie silence. Just when I dared to believe it might be over, a sound sent a fresh wave of terror crashing over me. The creak of the cabin door. I squeezed my eyes shut, the knife digging into my palm. This was it, the end. The floorboards creaked again, footsteps approaching with a slow, deliberate purpose. My breath hitched in my throat, and I braced myself for the inevitable. But when I finally opened my eyes, it wasn't the creature that stood before me. It was the guys, their faces etched with a mixture of concern and confusion. The knife clattered to the floor as relief washed over me, weak and shaky. They bombarded me with questions, which I mumbled incoherent answers to. Honestly, my answers were just ramblings, fueled by the lingering fear and the adrenaline finally starting to ebb. They found me a mess, but I was alive. That was all that mattered. We packed up and left Black Lake at sunrise, the silence of the woods now oppressive. I never spoke of the creature, not wanting to appear crazy. But the memory of those black eyes and the chilling screams remains a constant reminder of that terrifying weekend. The thing is, when we reached the city limits, I saw it again. Standing on the side of the road, a pale blur in the twilight, watching me with those bottomless eyes. It's been years, and I haven't seen it again. But the fear still lingers. Maybe it was just a trick of the light, a figment of my overactive imagination. Or maybe, just maybe, it's following me. Now, whenever I look out my window at night, and the shadows dance across the buildings, I can't help but wonder. Is it still out there, watching? What is up, guys? Mr. Shadow Whisper here. Thanks for sticking with the video. If you enjoyed it, consider leaving a like and subscribing for more. I always appreciate your feedback. So leave a comment below and let me know what you thought. And if you have a story you'd like to share, there's a link to my email in the description box.